when you hire a good copywriter, and maybe things aren't always going to work the first time. And I can go on and give you a million examples just that I know from like knowing other copywriters, having worked at a major company, hiring copywriters. A lot of big name copywriters do not hit it, out of the ballpark on the first try. Mm-hmm. So it's foolish to like throw the baby out with the bathwater, right? Because we're doing all these little sayings, so go back to them and have, this is where you kind of have that partnership is, like give them another try, because that second try sometimes can be that one that like really works, or maybe the third try,
This is an intro. Intro.
Hustle and flow chart with your boy, my boy, Matt Wolf and Joe Fier.
Hey.
Hello.
Hi there.
How's it going?
Good. I feel like I know how to hire a great copywriter now.
Yeah. I mean, you didn't before?
No.
Wow.
I didn't.
No, I didn't either. And
you seem shocked.
No, I'm messing around. I'm pausing for effect to the audience, and the audience is like, "Why is he pausing for effect?" Because
I was confused too, audience. It's okay.
Yeah, no, I just like to confuse people. I like to throw people off. No, today we got a masterclass in how to hire the best of the best copywriters, what to look for, how to pay them, how to compensate them in other ways, how to structure deals with them,
creating a nice partnership that is a win-win throughout. And so Kim Krause Schwalm was on the show with us, and she's got an insane just track record when it comes to copywriting and beating a lot of the greats. I mean, she's obviously a great herself, but she's like, when she was just starting off, she tells the story of how all these controls that were basically around, and a control meaning like this is basically the thing to beat. Like, this
is the current winning sales letter. This is the sales letter that's performing the best right now.
So you'll hear Kim reference controls a lot in this interview, and she basically came in fresh out from her previous experience, but as a junior copywriter, essentially starting to just beat all these controls. And so she talked about how she did that, but more importantly, how you as a listener, and us too, as these podcasters, people listening, talking to Kim, how we could just hire people to do this for us, because most of us, I think, have some experience of hiring someone else to help us with the copywriting, or at least the messaging of what we're trying to sell out there. And it's not that easy to get the right person in that seat.
Yeah, like if you're one of those people, like we've been in the past, past us, not current us, past us.
The past is the past, and we're new now.
But if you're like our past us, we've always kind of had this philosophy of, we should probably write the copy ourselves, because nobody's going to know our product as well as we know our product. And, copywriters are expensive, so we're not going to pay money to have somebody who doesn't know our product as well as us come in and write copy for our product. If you think like that, you're thinking like we've kind of always thought. But after this episode, we're going to think differently now. I think this episode is going to make you think differently about thinking that way.
Definitely, it changed our thinking. And I think that I know the thing that resonated with me is the partnership. And there's so many ways to establish just a long-term relationship and someone who can help support you in copy. And as a business owner, we got so much stuff. I mean, obviously, endless to-do lists. If you just let them go, you can work around the clock. And it's like, okay, and then now toss in copywriting into the mix. Well, shoot, now I'm going to learn how to write a headline and how to write a lead-in and all of these other bullet points and value prop. And it's like, oof, that's a whole nother job right there. Yeah, and it's like, you don't need to do that.
I still think there's a ton of value personally in learning copy.
Yes,
but I don't know if there's a ton of for what I'm taking from this conversation that we just had is it's probably not always the smartest move. In fact, it's usually not the smartest move to write your own copy for your own products. Saying that, I still think it's super, super powerful to understand copywriting and understand persuasion and understand the principles, because you're going to be using copywriting in more than just selling your own product, right? You're going to be using copywriting if you're writing emails, if you're running any sort of advertising, just
communication and
just
selling,
any sort of communication, like through email, like if we're talking specifically written copy, like just through email and verbal communication and sales, they're all using this sort of philosophies of copywriting. So I think it's an important skill to learn. I just don't necessarily believe anymore that it's the smartest thing for you to write your own copy for your business.
For sure. So on that point, Yeah, Kim's going to walk us through how to find the right person, but also a lot of her principles as well. And we'll likely bring her back on to dive even deeper into some of the, a lot more deeper details of copywriting and how you can apply it as well.
Yeah, I'd like to bring her back and talk more about like copywriting principles and, how to actually structure your copy. And for those people that are listening, because they do want to be copywriters and write their own copy, I do want to get more into those sort of tactical elements in a future episode. This episode, we kind of stayed in the vein of hiring copywriters and bringing copywriters onto your team to help what you're doing sell better.
For sure.
But I'm looking forward to having her back.
She'll be back. And she gave some amazing resources. I'll let her shout out that resource because it's pretty much at the beginning of the episode anyway.
Yep.
So we're taking notes on this episode like always, and there's a lot of notes on this one. You can get them for free within 2 weeks of the show going live at hustleandflowchart.com/comp, COMP. And you can also text with your texting device.
It's usually called a cell phone or a smartphone.
I have mine labeled as such as a texting device.
Yeah. No, Joe uses a rotary phone.
Yes. It takes a while to do this, but I have to rotary dial 38470 and somehow also rotary comp, COMP.
Yeah, no, Joe, I've seen Joe try. He rotary dials 38470 and then just starts yelling comp into the handset. And he doesn't understand why it never comes. He just like yells comp as loud as he can into the phone. One day he'll figure it out. One day I'll send him some YouTube videos. Show him how to do it.
Send me a flip phone. I'll be happy with that. I don't need more technology. So 38470. If you text that number and the word comp, you also get the free notes. So and then join the Facebook group. We'll likely have Kim in that group if she wants to be, but we have a lot of podcast guests in that group, so you can interact with them, interact with us, interact with other folks listening to the show at flowchartgroup.com. Yes,
only one .com because Joe didn't say it in sync with me, but it's flowchartgroup.com.
There was a lag.
Yeah.
All right, on to the episode with Kim.
Let's do it.
Kim, we are recording. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you guys?
Doing good. We're all toasty where we're living.
Yes, very 90-ish degree temperatures.
Right. Yeah. Summer is here finally. Oh man. And we were just chatting about Shramco. So I always like to give props to who's introduced us. So James, mutual buddy of ours.
And Justin Goff.
And Justin.
Yep,
yeah.
And Justin. Actually. He's great too. Yep.
Yeah. Had him on the show and Matt's like, wait, hold on. That's how I got on your email list.
Yeah, I know. Thank you, Justin.
Yeah. And it seems like your emails are very similar to Justin's as well, where it's just...
Maybe. I don't know. Mine tend to be a lot longer.
Yeah, that's true.
Out. Yeah.
Yeah. And I know Justin's daily, you're often.
He's daily. I'm like more as I'm inspired, and sometimes it's just a whole lot.
Yeah. No, I was telling Joe earlier that they're kind of similar in the sense that you don't always necessarily have a call to action in the email. Sometimes your emails are just like, hey, here's a lesson I wanted to share with you today. No call to action, And
that's true. Yeah. They're not all marketing.
Right.
But yeah, there's also some great opportunities to do other things too,
Yeah.
So, yeah.
It's weird that we have to highlight that because usually emails now from marketers are like, oh, there's always a purpose behind that, like a call to action. They're always directing them somewhere, which is great and all, but yeah, it's his valuable emails, the ones.
Yeah, it's I do give away a lot of valuable content. People are like, why do you give away so much content? I don't know.
Well, might as well just shout it out right at the beginning here. Where can people get on your list if they want to check that out?
You go to www.kimschwalm.com and it's KIMSCHWALM.
Very cool. And we'll make sure we link it up in the show notes too. So if you're listening to this on the website, there should be a link.
Yeah, I mean, I go by Kim Krause Schwalm, but you can just type in Kim Schwalm. You don't have to type all that stuff in.
All that stuff. Cool. Well, now that we got the call to action out of the way.
There you go. Okay, so we're done. It was nice talking with you.
I know. I'm like, this isn't our normal structure. It's great to have you. Yeah. No, but you have an interest. I mean, Brian Kurtz, you've done a lot of work with him as well. I saw you've done some work with Agora, and we're buddies with a lot of those folks too. So it's just really cool to hear the tie-ins. And you as a copywriter, you've done, I don't know how many. You have an insane world. Yeah, just like you've had a breadth of industry experience. It's not like you've been in like one lane. You've kind of seen it all. It seems like from what you've done, and I think it's going to be an exciting conversation around copy in general.
We'll make sure it's exciting.
That's our job.
Yeah. Yeah. And, I have a former life as a marketer too, and publisher. So that's how I got into this whole copywriting thing. I never actually worked as a copywriter before I went freelance a few decades ago. I was always the marketer who could write, and worked for a couple different companies, but it was Phillips Publishing that was probably the big turning point for me in terms of really getting heavy into direct response. And Phillips Publishing, back when I joined it in the, God, it's going to make me sound so old, but the early 90s, it was when the whole alternative health market was exploding and just, taking off. And I'd been there about 6 months as a marketer, and they asked me to help them launch a supplement business. And so I launched a business called Healthy Directions, and grew that to like more than 23 million in sales within the first 3 years, which is like 38 million in today's dollars, just going to the back end, like to their house, in-house subscribers to their alternative health newsletters. And so that was just a lot of fun. So I've been like in the supplement business, since, some of you guys were even born. And but so I'm really excited and really passionate about alternative health. I mean, I have done a lot of other things too. I worked in some other areas of Phillips business after I launched the company. I worked directly with Jay Abraham on some of his newsletters. I worked with Toby Smith, who went on to, do his own investment stuff. And then I finally decided just to take the leap, and I worked with all these, big name, great copywriters over the years, and just saw, wow, they live a great life. They work like, 20 hours a week, and they have all this flexibility, and they make all this money, and I think I could do it. And so I took the leap and never looked back. And it's been now a little over 20 years. And, and so I've that's kind of just to give you the bigger picture of my background.
Was that the reality? Was it 20 hours a week for you once you got into it? And or was it like, oh, wait, there's a lot more to it than I thought?
It took a few years, but yeah. So I got to the point of, at the time I was at Phillips, way back, and this was like in 98 that I left Phillips Publishing, I was making like six figures. Even then, I was making like 100K plus a year. And so to walk away from that job was like, a big leap, but I was able to do so. I had a retainer arrangement that the first, for like the first 6 months, that was guaranteeing me like 90% of my salary, but would only take half my time. So I was doing that right out of the gate. And then I just started having more clients come to me, or people that I was referred to. And so the first year I made like 50% more, and I probably worked 35 hours a week. I had a full-time nanny because I just had my first child.
Wow.
And so, it's there's nothing like having I don't know if you guys probably haven't dealt with this yet, but when you're paying a ton of money to somebody to come to your house and watch your child, like I would go to my office when she got there, and I'd just be like nose to the grindstone. I was so productive. I'd get so much done because it's like, hey, I'm paying like a fortune for this, this nanny. Yep. And, so yeah, I worked pretty hard, and then it was like, it was like the best of both worlds. I could take breaks. I could be with my son. I could take him out for a walk or whatever. But yeah, so I did that. And then I had a second child, and then like my kids got a little older, and then it was time that they were just in school for like maybe 6 hours a day, like the primary, whatever, preschool, whatever on up. And so by that point, I had gotten to the point where I was writing promos where I had royalty potential. I know we're going to talk about that a little bit later, but that allowed me to create streams of passive income. And so it just got to the point that I just kind of simplified my life. And I did get to the point where I was working maybe 20, 25 hours a week, and I was making significantly more than I was at my six-figure job at Phillips. And awesome. And I was just working when the kids were at school, and then I was just mom the rest of the time and doing all the mom stuff, and it was just wonderful. Like I felt really lucky that I was able to like achieve that elusive balance and have a satisfying, good paying career. But like it was, I wasn't doing all this like nowadays, because my kids are both like in their early 20s now, but like nowadays it's like everything is like 24/7,
Oh my gosh. I know.
But like I literally, like I didn't have a smartphone back then. Everything would just be, okay, I'm done. It's 3:00. I'm picking up my kids, and then I take them to football or soccer or whatever the heck, and so it was great. So I did that for many years, and I did really only work probably 20, 25 hours a week for many, many years.
Well, I think that's a great I mean, I had a kid on Halloween, so our first baby, and my wife is experiencing exactly what you're going through, where we have, help. It's from my sister, so it's a little cheaper than a super expensive nanny, but still, like, it's a constraint. And I feel like those constraints, like, I have it as well, not as much as her, but oh my God, it's been helping me so much just to prioritize what I'm doing, set up more streams of income that don't rely on us doing the work, like actually manually. So yeah, I mean, I think
it makes you very focused on how you run your business. And now that my kids have, independent or in college or whatever, it's like, I'm not nearly as good as I was. Like I find myself, wait, why is it taking me so long to get this done? And why am I working at 10 o'clock at night? Like it's nuts, It was weird when I had more of the constraints with the kids. Like I actually, in some ways, I'm focused. I'm definitely focused. I'm doing a lot of different things, but, it's different, because you kind of, when you have those forced constraints, you have to get really focused and
I feel like we live in a world too where it's just so much easier to get distracted now than it probably was 20 years ago,
Oh, I kind of wish to get started 20 years ago rather than now, just for the constraints, but it's all good. We're dealing with what
I mean, especially with the current news cycles, which we won't get into now. We won't get into today. But
let's hope it's old news for, a few weeks from now.
True.
Let's hope all this old news. I just want it all to go away.
Yeah. Well, let's get into the copy stuff, because what you're doing, you help a lot of clients out, but you're obviously helping out a lot of folks to become better copywriters. And I know we were chatting about pre-chat before recording is helping folks who might have issues hiring the right people, the right copywriters, or even understanding the reasons why they would do that in the first place.
Sure.
So maybe, I don't know where we start there, but what's, I guess, the common issue when someone's thinking about copyright, hiring someone, or maybe just approaching like, hey, I want to improve my copy. What do I do?
Right. Well, it's not so much you want to improve your copy, you want to improve your sales results, right? Like know that whatever it is that you're currently using, it ain't getting it done. Right. So, coming from the background I came from, which is, from a major direct response publisher. And, at that time, Phillips was probably 5 or 10 times as big as Agora was at the time. But, again, Agora has similar philosophy. So that's Boardroom, where Brian Kurtz was obviously for many years. They always had the attitude of, we want to constantly be testing new promos, and we want to hire the very best copywriters we possibly can. And we want to pay them as much as possible, because if we're paying them a lot, that means we're making a lot, and that's where some of these royalty arrangements come in, where, I know there were times where, Phillips was probably cutting like a $3 or $4 million check to Gary Bencivenga, or, people like that, just for royalties, for massive mailings, but then they were probably making 15 or 20 million, So, it was a good sign. Like if they're paying a lot of royalties to copywriters because they've got a really successful promo or package that's kicking butt and making the company lots of money. And then in return, and again, I don't want these numbers to scare anybody away, because no one's making like $3 or $4 million in royalties per mailing these days, right? But when you have a win-win kind of baked into your copywriting arrangements, it's a whole different thing. It's really more of a partnership. There's an incentive to, the copywriter has a stake in just doing everything they can. They're not working. I know when someone hires me, I'm not working for that fee. I'm working for, maybe the 100,000 or plus, 200,000 plus, hopefully in royalties over time that promo may bring me. Right.
Yeah. The bigger picture. Yeah.
And not everyone is going to, be a huge winner. I have a pretty good hit rate, but like no one's batting 1,000, and every single one's going to be huge. But yeah, you're looking at, what do I need to do to get that big winner? So you put everything into it. And then when, let's say it becomes a winner and it's, they're using it, and then 6 months or a year later, they're like, hey, it's starting to fatigue a little bit, like all good promos do, I'm like, yeah, let me add it. Like, let me do a new headline test. Let me do a new email, whatever. And I'm not charging for that kind of stuff, because I'm your partner and I have a stake in keeping this thing going, or let's test something that's going to boost response or whatever. So, that's kind of what you get when you work with a more seasoned copywriter who, has a vested stake in your success of your promo, in the success of the promo they wrote for you. So, and I don't think a lot of people really see it that way. They see, oh, well, if it's like 4% or whatever it is, of my sales, like that's like an expense, but it's not, because like, again, like it's, you're going to be bringing more sales in. And, if you are able to, like, you have a successful promo, you can run it to more, list, or, run more ads or run more traffic to it, et cetera. Like, your sales are going up, more than proportionally.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah. As a copywriter, or I guess as a business owner, what are some things that, maybe as a copywriter, like what would you look for as like an ideal partnership? Like, are there certain things with their offer that you want before you say yes? And this is where I'm kind of framing it for the business owner. Like maybe they can prepare themselves for, A-list type copywriters to help them out.
I mean, there's definitely, look, a lot of copywriters will take a wide range of projects on. It's not always the same list. I mean, for me, like the best bet for me, like would be, if I was picking and choosing, I would be looking for maybe two things. One is this a proven product? Like, have you actually been successful selling it, versus a completely new launch? Now I definitely do launches all the time. Like I, write the first promo for a brand new product, and that's fine. But, sometimes if you're looking at it like as a, is this what's going to give me the best ROI on this time slot of my schedule versus something else? It's like, well, this is a product that's been proven to work, and the control is really fatiguing. So then I know, okay, good. It'll be something that's beatable, rather than, oh, it's like kicking butt and nothing, it's like, oh God, like, do I really want to go up against something that's already kicking butt? Right. And it's funny because I remember Gary Bencivenga talking about this very topic, like when I went to his Bencivenga 100 seminar, so even like the great copywriters kind of look at those things. And then, are they, back in the day, when direct mail was huge, most copywriters were, including myself and still am, compensated in terms of royalties per piece mailed, because the bigger the mailing, the better the promo, the stronger it was in terms of its response or projected response. The more names a company could safely or profitably mail. And so, if they're able to do a huge rollout, it's because, like I was just talking with a potential client somebody actually I used to work with at Phillips just earlier today. And she's like, yeah, if we'd have a just okay promo, and this is even now with direct mail list, we're able to mail like 200 to 300,000 names every, 2 months. If we have a strong one, we're mailing 500,000 names every 2 to 3 months. So if you're getting a royalty of, 3 or 4 cents per name mailed, then you're talking about a big difference,
Gotcha.
And again, this is where the incentive comes in, right? So I would look at potentially, okay, so are you already generating a lot of sales with this product online, or, are you mailing a lot of names regularly? And so, or with other products that you have that are successful, so then I can kind of gauge, okay, so it might be X amount up front, but then here's the potential, and, so, I mean, if I was just looking at that, but again, there's a lot of copywriters who, like working sometimes with just a different, like a different range of clients. Are not always going to have like, oh, it has to be a certain threshold. Sometimes it's like maybe they really buy into, the passion that you have or the market or the product, and they're willing to take a chance on something that they think they can make it into a big opportunity for both of you.
Yeah. No, I think that's really good. Do you, yeah, because we were chatting, Matt and I were chatting before with you about how we've run into hiring copywriters that, just don't pan out how we wished it would have. And it's probably because of our lack of wanting to invest more in them, or maybe build in incentives, like you said, royalties and maybe some extra things. So help us out.
I mean, well, sometimes you get what you pay for. I mean, that, we all know that's sort of one of those things. Now that's not to say that there's a lot of really good up and coming copywriters. I mean, I know I've been mentoring some myself, and not everybody you need to pay, huge dollars for, and you can get some really good copy, I mean, I started out like obviously not making, what I've made in recent years, and, people saw in me, oh, maybe I remember once somebody said, you're like this, what did she call me? Like a hidden gem or something. And I kind of felt like I was just like this dusty old thing, like in an antique shop that somebody like just picked up I said, oh, this one's kind of cool.
Diamond in the rough.
It was diamond in the rough. Maybe that's what she did. But I felt like it was kind of a weird, I don't know. I felt a little weird about it, but I was like, okay, it's fine. I'm not going to but anyway, but she, then she just started giving me some more opportunities. And so, I was able to take these small projects like, 2-page renewal letters or some emails or whatever, and really do very well with them. And then next thing you know, they're like, well, let's give her a chance at one of these big projects, and then within a year or so, I think on my second try, I beat Jim Rutz. I don't know if you ever heard of the late Jim Rutz, but he was like this great copywriter. He was legendary, and he had the control for their flagship financial newsletter. And here I was, this little upstart, and I was able to beat him. And then as soon as Brian Kurtz heard that I had the control for this product and had beat Jim Rutz, he's like, let's hire Kim to write a Boardroom promo. And then I went up against Paris Lampropoulos. There was like some 7-year control for Tax Hotline. And then I ended up beating his promo, and I became the first female copywriter to get a Boardroom control. And so, but it all started with just being a little diamond in the rough that somebody said, hey, she looks like she could write some good copy. And, so I guess for those kinds of things you want to look at is, even if they haven't written exactly for your type of product or even the type of promo that you want them to write, like get some samples of their work. And, and I always tell other copywriters starting out, like, the best way to start is just start, getting some paid work, getting some samples in your portfolio. And it don't necessarily have to be exactly in, like, you don't have to say, oh, I only write for the poodle owners who live in San Diego niche or whatever, sometimes people just like want you to go so micro, and it's like, that's crazy, especially if you're just starting out. Like I would write for pretty much everybody and anything almost, like when I was starting out, but I think it made me a better copywriter because I wrote such a wide variety of stuff. I mean, again, a lot of it was in health and financial because of my background, but it gives you that flexibility, and, because you realize too, like, none of these two products are really exactly the same, and you don't want to take a fill in the blanks formulaic approach to every single promo, so, I mean, I could go on about that topic, but so that's kind of how I got started. And so things you would look for is look at their writing, look at their portfolio, and kind of just talk to them and just, are they a person who is really passionate, like very curious? Do they, did they strike you as kind of person going to really put the hard work into the promo?
Yeah. Well, not to get too granular here, but when you do get samples, what kind of things are you looking for inside of the samples? Like if we're somebody who maybe isn't well versed in copywriting, reading a sample of somebody else's work, what kind of things would I be looking for?
That's a good question. I mean, one thing you could do is just read it cold as if you were the prospect. Like, does the headline grab you? Does it make you want to read further? Do you find yourself, reading it and not getting confused or lost? I mean, I've had the experience of having, Paris Lampropoulos, who I just mentioned earlier, but he copy chiefs all the copywriters who write for one of my clients. And so I think he told me once, sometimes he just prefers to read copy that he's reviewing like at night, maybe, when he's kind of sleepy and maybe after a drink or who knows, and does it still grab him? Is he able to follow it, without
so basically
getting confused,
get him out of his own head almost, like
experience
a little
it,
different
like your
thinking.
prospect, be able to look at it cold. I know it's hard, like, but if you're a business owner and, sometimes it's hard to sing to write your own copy. I mean, I have the experience I was sharing with you of having my own copywriting programs. And sometimes I'm just like, oh my God, like it's so hard to just write my own copy. And I get other people to write it, who have been through the program, because they can usually take a fresher approach than I can.
Yeah, no, that's something that we definitely struggle with ourselves. I mean, Joe and I have both studied copywriting quite a bit, and we can look at other people's sales letters and actually give like pretty good feedback on here's where we make some tweaks. When it comes to writing our own sales letter, we struggle like crazy to even put the first like few sentences on the page.
Right. And, one thing you could do now that you mention it is, and I know there are copywriters who do this, is you can ask them to just do a critique of your current control.
Right.
And if you like what they say, maybe you're like, maybe this is the person you want to hire to do a whole new one.
Yeah. I mean, so that's actually probably a great thing. And we've done that minorly, but without like really a real process of what we were doing. But yeah, the audits or critique, like you said, I think that's one of the cooler ways to see them as a character, like how they work too, because we've had some issues of copywriters just kind of falling off and they literally just falling off and like not communicating. We're like, dang it.
Okay,
like,
so
I like that person.
let's talk about how to solve that. But I just real quick, not to pitch my getting on my list again, but my current freebie when you get on my list is what I call the A-list copywriters promo checklist.
Ooh.
And it's actually 5 checklists in one. Like there's like a start kit, one for like getting a copywriter started on a project. There's a research checklist, but there's some for like the promo, like for each section of the promo, like that can actually help you as the client, evaluate like the headline, evaluate the lead, evaluate the body copy, evaluate the close, because you could just go through and see, does it check all the boxes, right? And then there's like a final promo checklist, which, covers a whole bunch of other things. So I would say go, get that free checklist, which I probably should be charging for now that I talk about it. And in fact, I might know. So get it quick.
Get it quick. Yeah.
But yeah, use that. And that might lead you to some things in terms of evaluating the copy. And then I was ready to say something else, and now I forgot.
The other one was about having them drop, like just communication falling off, them not following through.
Yes. So I guess the question in that case is, how are you paying them? Are you not paying them 100% up front, are you?
No, we've never done that.
I mean, this is a case basis. I think the one that you're talking about, I actually can't remember the guy's name because he fell off, but
we're not going to say it anyway.
Yeah, we wouldn't say it anyway. But so we basically were in conversations with somebody who was going to do some copy for us. We actually never got to the point of making an agreement with this particular person.
That specific one, but I know, it's kind of happened in numerous phases. But I guess if you have any good principles or best practices that.
Well,
to prevent that from happening.
Sometimes if you just go, I'm not saying this is what you guys did, but like if you go back and forth on price, like, I don't know, to me, that would just be like, like, I don't want to work with these people, Yeah. So, again, it kind of comes down to like, you get what you pay for. And I'm not saying that you should just, be like, price is no object and I'll just pay anybody, $20,000 to write a promo. I mean, you still want to make sure you're getting, something like a good value for your investment of, that's a big investment, whether it's 2,000 or 5,000, for a lot of small companies, it's a big investment. So I think you would look at, trying to, have a fair deal that, you're compensating them well, pay them, 25 to 50% upfront, depending on what the situation is. I mean, like I've always gotten half upfront just to book a slot in my schedule, but you could have a phase where, and I know there's companies that do this, and I personally, it kind of drives me a little crazy, but, you could just maybe do a quarter up front, and then maybe they give you some sample headlines or some kind of outline and copy platform document or something, so that you kind of have maybe some different steps of approval built in that allow you to, like, maybe, especially if it's the first time you're working with a particular copywriter and they're not like somebody that you already know is like established with 100 different controls, but like, that could be a way to maybe minimize some of the risk and kind of go through it that way. And then they have, kind of some built-in deadlines they have to meet, they're like
milestones that are holding them accountable. Yeah.
Go
ahead. Sorry.
No, I'm saying that could be one way to do it. And, but most professional copywriters, you're not going to have that situation. I mean, you're going to agree to a schedule up front. You're going to hopefully put it in your agreement. I mean, I always put like a rough proposed schedule, like in any kind of agreement or invoice, so that everybody's on the same page. And, so make sure you have all that mapped out.
The other thing that I've sort of run into when hiring copywriters in the past is, I'd love to hear your perspective on it, is in my opinion, almost copywriters being almost too stubborn with the voice that they want to use. We've had people write copy for us in the past. We'd read it and we'd give them the feedback that, this isn't really our voice. This isn't really the way we'd want to word things. And then we'd have the copywriter come back to us and go, well, do you want it to sell? Because what I wrote is what sells. Right. And so there's this kind of debate between us and the copywriter of like, yes, it does. Maybe this is what sells, but it also doesn't really feel like us. And we're kind of uncomfortable with the wording. And I've had that sort of back and forth situation in the past where I've butted heads with copywriters because they wanted to write it in one way, but I kind of would have preferred it being in another way. And I'm sure you get what I'm saying, but
yeah, well, I do. I'm just trying to lift my jaw up off my desk. Like, I just think that's crazy for a copywriter to be like that. I mean, especially because like what are you guys selling? Are you selling something that's based on your personality and your own personal brand, right?
For the most part, yeah. And we're talking more like past case scenarios. I mean, right now we really don't have many offers that are ours that we're putting out into the world. Most of our revenue comes from affiliate marketing and sort of JV deals where we're kind of more behind the scenes these days. But in the past, yeah, it was like info courses or like agency services or things like that.
And there was a brand element, like, like there'd be emails. So we're just trying to keep it congruent.
Yeah.
That was the only thing.
Yeah. Well, so maybe that you add that obviously to how you evaluate potential copywriters, because you want copywriters who have had to write in other brands' voices in the past. And there is a whole skill set to that. In fact, I know a friend of mine, Abby Woodcock, created this whole thing. I think it's called Codex training. And it's a pretty high dollar training that copywriters can go through. But, I know a lot of people who've done it. And, it gives them the tools, like there's a whole systematic approach to incorporating the brand voice or the spokesman voice. But I mean, even going back to my Phillips Publishing's days when, we had the big brand person for the alternative health newsletter was Dr. Julian Whitaker. And, so the newsletter came from him. It was written by him. But all the stuff we sold on the back end, including the supplements, was very much his brand. And so we were incorporating his voice, like every little, like in-house, we wrote a lot of the copy, that on my team. And it would be, sales letters and stuff that would be coming from him. And we always incorporated his voice. Like it had to be on brand. I mean, that's just like a basic of marketing,
that's what we
and any kind of communication. I mean, I was once a brand manager in a previous company. So, I mean, I don't know, like it just kind of drives me, it makes me, especially in something where somebody's selling a course or people are buying something based on that person. Like I can't think of anything more important than for it to not just sound like everything else out there, like some generic marketing voice.
Yeah. And I mean, to be fair, and in retrospect, it was probably just the fact that we were price shopping copywriting, At the end of the day, that's probably what it comes down to.
Yeah, you get what you pay for. Who said that?
Who knows? I know you've said it a few times here.
Penny wise and pound foolish.
Yeah. Well, I mean, but I think that's a struggle that a lot of business owners have with this, is to understand the value that a really good copywriter can bring to not only just a promo, but a business overall.
Yeah.
Right.
And I think that's I know that was our issue, and that feeling maybe this isn't a partnership, it's a transactional, I'm going to get a sales page. But like you've been mentioning, partnership, building incentives.
Yeah, make it more of a partnership. I mean, no one can guarantee you results. Like beware if somebody says, I'm going to write you something, I guarantee, but you can build in something, even if it's not like this, huge royalty deal, but you could build something in like, okay, we're going to hire you to do one version, and then we're going to want maybe 2 possible test versions, and maybe we'll do those after we do the initial test or something. When I say test, like maybe 2 different headline and leads. And, you could either have them provide those along with the initial draft, or you could, say we want to test it with this one, but then we may come back and based on what we learn, want you to do another one, and maybe just include that in the whole deal. Because I'll tell you, I've done a whole presentation on this once, and I actually have my first course, I talked about this, but, I mentioned earlier how I got a control early on where I beat Jim Rutz, and another one where I beat Paris Rampopoulos. And then after that, I actually wrote my first health supplement promotion. And I will say, and like Magalog, right? Long form. And the first one of each of those, it didn't work, or it either bombed or it came close to working, but not quite, right? And had the client and I just said, oh, forget it, didn't work, blah, 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 but no, like everybody, because but I had an incentive, even though like I'm not going to get the royalty, obviously, if the promo doesn't work, but I had an incentive, like, well, let's go back and try something else. Or and the client, to their credit was like, yeah, let's give you another try. Right. So the first time, it's kind of a funny story, but like when I wrote my very first financial promo, and this is for a fairly big company, and I thought, you know what, I'm going to take this. Maybe it's a little cocky, because I'm like this young, arrogant, not arrogant, but you know what I mean? Like, didn't know any better, really, basically. I was, like, I'm going to take a fresh approach. And I convinced them to let me put this Godzilla monster on the front cover. And it was like, the headline was something like the change monster that ate the economy. And,
that's good.
And I understand it was actually kind of intriguing, but it was going up against Jim Rutz, and the control it went up against, he actually had put a presidential seal on the front cover, and it looked like a special White House report.
Yeah.
And it said something like, what I forgot to tell you before the election or something. This was like when George W. Bush was president. And so that was just like, that just killed it, right? Against a dinosaur,
Sure.
So mine like did not do well, but then they hired me 6 months later and said, you know what, can you write? And they paid me a full fee again, like write a whole new promo and blah, 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 because we liked your copy. It just, it didn't work against Jim Rutz. And so I did it again, and I took a whole different angle, and I made it more like a issue. It looked like an actual issue and all this stuff. Anyway, I ended up beating Jim Rutz on the second try. And kind of the same thing with the Boardroom folks. When I got my first shot to go up against Paris's control, my headline was a little too clever. Everything else was great. Headline was a little clever. It came close. It might have actually tied, but you need to be like at least 15, 20% ahead to get the new control with Boardroom, or at least back then.
Wow.
So they gave me another shot, like, well, can you do another headline test? And I'm like, sure. And of course I didn't charge for that. I'm like, yeah, I got a new headline, new lead. Let's put that on. Everything else was the same. And I beat them on the second try. And then, with that first nutritional supplement promo that I did, the first shot, like I was like, wow, this product does everything. It does like this and this and this and this. And it went out there. And, of course, at the time, like that kind of stuff wasn't working. It was more like, is this a joint pain thing, or is this a memory solution? And, people wanted like a specific solution. So I went back on the second try, and the client paid me more money to just kind of do a complete reworking. And I decided to position it as a joint supplement. And that thing mailed as a control for like 10 years.
Whoa. Geez.
Yeah. So these were all humongously successful promos, but like it was the first try, like either bombed or just, really didn't quite work, and then, or didn't beat the control, but then it was going back and doing it. So I guess another lesson is like, when you hire a good copywriter, and maybe things aren't always going to work the first time. And I can go on and give you a million examples just that I know from like knowing other copywriters, having worked at a major company, hiring copywriters. A lot of big name copywriters do not hit it, out of the ballpark on the first try. So it's foolish to like throw the baby out with the bathwater, right? Since we're doing all these little sayings, so go back to them and have, this is where you kind of have that partnership is, like give them another try, because that second try sometimes can be that one that like really works, or maybe the third try,
Well, that's and that's why I think it's resonating, at least for me, because of all the other times we've taken a hack at copywriting, and it's like, oh, we need someone else because we just don't have the time, or we think they could do it better than us, and then we don't give them a fair shot to try to actually maybe learn our voice, or learn what's working, what's not. I mean, like nothing, you can't expect an amazing result out of the first go every single time.
Well, we've also shopped around copywriters in the past, and we've sort of priced shopped a bit, I think is a big element of it. And we've talked to some of the more quote unquote like A-list copywriters, names that people all know and stuff, and there's definitely a sticker shock element when they first bid you the copy project, and it's a sticker shock that comes prior to like even knowing if we're going to get a result. So like, I think there's that sort of mental barrier that we've always struggled to get over of like, okay, this person, I'm making up numbers, but okay, this person wants like 30,000 up front plus, 10% royalty on the deal. Well, shoot, that's a really, really big number, and we don't even know for sure if they're going to drive results for us. And so I think there's like a mental block there that we've yet, even to this day, to like really get over to jump on board with like the A-list higher ticket copywriters. Yeah.
And you don't necessarily need, again, if you have a business that at most, I don't even know how big your business is, but let's say it's a 2 million a year business or something, that would be like living in a house that is like, worth about $200,000 and putting on like $150,000 addition or something. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like you're not going to necessarily get a big enough ROI potentially. Again, it really depends. Like you could have a business that's 2 million, but it really could be a $20 million business. And in that case, making that one big investment and getting that really great copywriter, that could potentially really leapfrog your business.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it kind of depends on your situation. I mean, like, speaking of Jim Rutz, like, I'll never forget when he wrote a promo, probably it was like 15 years ago. It's a legendary direct mail promo with the headline, "Read This or Die," believe it or not.
Wow.
Are you guys, it's one of these ones
It sounds
that's so
familiar.
Yeah, it's really worth studying. But I remember when and this is when, direct mail was in its heyday, but I mean, that piece was so strong that they were able to mail, like, it was Healthy Directions, or Phyllis Publishing that was mailing it for one of their health newsletters. And it brought on like 100,000 subscribers like within a year. So that,
wow.
I mean, it built an entire business because they also had a whole back end supplement business, which I also helped them launch. And so that, it was like bringing people in at like an average of, maybe $60, $70 for subscription, but then being able to sell a good chunk of those people like several hundred, if not thousands of dollars worth of supplements.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like, that was a huge business. So if they paid him, I think back then, like, I think Jim Rutz would charge like $100,000 to write a promo. And then I think he might have even gotten royalty on top of that, but it was worth every penny.
Yeah.
I mean, literally built like $100 million business out of that investment.
Well, and that's key. You said the whole back end there. It's
Yeah.
like if a business owner is only focused on just this front end product, just understand the implications of what more customers will do for selling repeat customers.
Yeah, it's interesting. I did just have a podcast interview with our friend James Schramko that who we were mentioning earlier, and it's funny. Our whole topic was a completely different topic than what we're talking about today. It was all about that whole back end,
right?
And just maximizing that, because I mean, that was sort of the background I came from. Was when I went to Philips, it was all like, what do we do with this whole back end? And and now that I've for years have been that unicorn that can write the acquisition promo that's successful, which a lot of copywriters can't really do. That's what everybody always comes to me for. And then I just see like some business owners, not all, but some are just so constantly focused on bringing new people in and just churning through new customers. And they're just ignoring this huge back end. They're not nurturing those people. They're not thinking about what next do they want to buy beyond the whole funnel upsell thing, which I think can be a negative when it's not handled as well as it could be. Having a short-sighted vision of, let me just max out everything I can get from this person just because they, click the button, and leave them feeling like, oh my God, have I made some horrible mistake?
Right.
Like, you don't want to start the relationship off like that. But yeah, like, back in the old school days, like we would, get somebody to buy, again, it would be through like an insert in the newsletter or whatever kind of mailing. And then we always found that they buy like some kind of bounce back in the box. And then we'd mail something within the first 10 days. And then we'd get like 8 to 10% response from that. And, while they were still hotline, right? So the hotline period isn't just at that time of ordering. There's a whole period of time, like in that first 30 days, that I think are really critical. And I'm not sure very many marketers focus on that.
Then maybe we talk about, I've actually never heard of that term, hotline.
Yeah, it's an old school. I mean, it's like, I mean, it's not like it's that old school. I mean, my God, within the last 15 years, I mean, I'm sure there are companies like, okay, so I just like 3-4 years ago, there's a guy I know, he's super old school with what he's been doing. Like, he does like newspaper ads, and he sells like these vinegar books. And then on the back end, he has like all these little honey vinegar supplements and all these things, but he's never really like done a lot with this. I mean, it's a nice little business, but, and I just consulted with him for free, just because he's like in a mastermind that I'm in, or he was at the time. And we just had a few conversations, and I actually had somebody I was coaching as a copywriter that I was linking up to help him out with some copy. And so I mentioned this whole idea, like, why aren't you like sending people a mailing to introduce this product? Like, after they buy the book, like send something within the first 10 days. And he tried it, and it's like, oh my God, like, we did that. And there was like another thing too, like have a stock up, have people buy more of what they've already bought, which, I know Justin Goff's probably talked about, and other people like with upsells, but you can do that really at any time with your buyers. And one of the things I did, back when I was at Philips, like, there would be these times where they would literally call it Dash for Cash, where the company president would be like, okay, everybody come up with something you can do before the end of the quarter to boost everybody, boost revenue or whatever.
Yeah.
And So we'd call it Dash for Cash. Everybody had to come up with like 5 ideas to like bring in more cash. And so I came up with this idea, like we had, all these people buying, supplements, which are obviously a consumable product. And we try to get as many people to go on auto ship, but not everybody wanted to go on auto ship or stay on auto ship. So I was like, well, let's do a stock up sale. And we, put like a seasonal thing on it, like stock up for winter, stock up for summer, whatever. And we just brought in like, I don't know, like with one little mailing to the list, like $350,000. And it's funny because like 15 years later, there's a woman who lives in my neighborhood and she works part-time for the company for Healthy Directions. And all she does is stock up mailings.
Really?
And then one summer she hired my son to babysit her kid. I'm like, wait, it's all come full circle. I invented the stock up mailing. I created her job and now she's got a job for my son.
Wow.
It was just kind of funny. But no, I mean, so anyway, I had told this guy like, do a stock up mailing. And he's like, and he was so happy. He just like sent me a check. He's like, I got to pay you something. I'm like, okay, whatever, But, and I was able to just take one of my old stock up mailings and give it to the copywriter I had coached and said, here, just kind of follow this. And she wrote it and it worked great. So, it's a lot of much more simple copy that you don't need an A-level copywriter to do this back end stuff. And there's so much money in it. And there's probably a lot of opportunities for a lot of companies. And you can get like a fairly junior level copywriter who can just knock this stuff out. And that's basically how I got started. I was doing all that for the first couple of years and people were like, oh, she's doing some nice stuff. Maybe we'll give her a shot at something bigger,
Well, that's actually interesting because that could be a way to get a little warmed up to hiring a copywriter. It could be a junior copywriter.
Yeah.
And, lesser investment up front. Maybe there's more perks, incentives built in because you have the back end to deal with. And that could be very interesting because it's kind of just found money at the end of the day.
It is. And if you're not getting to it, I mean, I think that would be a top opportunity for any business to look at is, and then bringing in a copywriter who can write a simple 1-page, 2-page letter or email or whatever it is. And, just bring the money in. I mean, that's much lower risk than it's much, much harder to get somebody who will buy from you for the first time, with a cold list or whatever. And that's why people pay, the A-listers like me a lot of money. And like I said, we become those unicorns that can do that because a lot of people can, and it is hard to, bring on new people. And obviously both are vital to any business, but I've worked with way too many companies, especially smaller companies, but even bigger companies that just there's so much emphasis just on that acquisition
right.
and not really building. I mean, like a real business is, the customers that buy from you again and again, especially if you have a consumable product. I mean, you're absolutely crazy if you're not. And it's funny too, I think so much of this got, inculcated into my head because coming from a subscription business, like a publishing company like Phillips, that was all around me. It was like, we're in the business of getting renewals and this and that. And so when we were getting ready to launch the Healthy Directions business, I remember having the company president, grilling me like, okay, so, because we were like, oh, we got the copy, we're ready to sell. I was like, okay, so how are you going to get them to order a second time? And what are you going to do after that? And it was like, whoa. And so we had to have it all mapped out, have everything set, everything in place for that first order and like, boom, 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 go right into the machine. Yep. And, and again, I just don't think a lot of businesses think about it that way.
Yeah, no, it's not. We actually had a conversation just, prior to we recorded another podcast and his whole emphasis is on the back end and he has a whole model around it. And it's exactly what you're saying. I know Perry Marshall, we referenced over there, he has this whole espresso machine concept where it's like, they're always going to keep percentage of your customer are going to keep paying for more expensive things if you keep giving them
absolutely.
offers. Yeah. So I like that. And
that's a good way to bring a new copywriter in and test it out. And
right.
And and another thing too is you can also, maybe work out arrangements with other copywriters to copy chief, for you, because I think that's also where sometimes things go awry. If you are a busy business owner, or maybe you don't have a lot of experience with copy and you're the one, or maybe you fancy yourself to be a good copywriter, which sometimes can be conflicting because you think your way is the best way, but yet you hired this person to, figure out the best way, right? And sometimes that can be an issue. So sometimes it's better to just sort of separate yourself and maybe you have someone come in and kind of copy chief and manage that project for you, because they'll know better how to work with that copywriter and make that process go more efficiently. And so you don't have times,
like a project manager for copy, essentially.
You can be like a project manager, but also someone who, well, you also have those too. I mean, there are people, I've done a lot of work, in the past, like book launches and stuff for Dr. Mark Hyman and some other people. And, they will bring in, I actually know a couple people who do this who I could highly recommend, that are, for hire project managers, and they just take over. They handle all the creative, like they will manage and select the copywriters, the designers, this and that. They'll get it all. They'll, you know what I mean? Like they'll take that off your plate.
Right.
And it's almost like having, but you only need them for, you're just like having a part-time basis, having a solid marketing manager or project manager who can like handle those things. And sometimes that's better because they're much more experienced with how do you work with the copywriters and how do you, keep things moving along, because you can get things can just get bogged down. I know how busy I get. I'm sure you guys get busy, and any business owner gets super busy. So.
Yep. And then that prevents the project from actually working out. And in our case, sometimes it prevents us from even pursuing copywriting even further, hiring someone, because we're like, we don't want to manage another thing.
Right. Yeah. You just don't have time, but like you're missing out.
Totally.
Obviously. You're not able to, grow your
Interesting.
business.
Yeah. I'm curious when it comes to like the cost of hiring a copywriter, are there any sort of rules of thumb or anything like that people can follow as far as like what they can expect to pay for copy, what they can expect as far as like upfront costs versus royalties? Like, how does somebody know that they're going into like a copywriting agreement and they're getting like a decent price? They're not getting, they're not getting robbed by it, basically. You know what I mean? Like how would somebody go into it and know that they're paying a fair price for what they're getting with the copy?
I mean, there are some people who have done some like pricing guides out there. I know AWI has put one together that actually could be, I don't know if it's something you might be able to get it for free. But it breaks down like all the different types of promos, this and that, and it gives ranges, but the ranges are quite broad, if I recall. So, the ranges are going to vary a lot depending on the experience level of the copywriter, and their reputation, obviously.
Right. So is there any if you're willing to give like this amount up front, then the percentage should be this much for, is there like any sort of like sliding scale on like royalty versus upfront kind of thing?
So the royalty deals that I've done are generally, there's like a flat fee for creating the promo. And then there is, if it's like an online promo, it's like a percent of gross or net sales beyond that. And it's, it's a single digit number. It's not some huge scary number. Right. But yeah, so that might generally be how you would structure an online, and this would be only for long form copy. Like I would not charge a royalty on an email or website copy, you know what I mean? But if it's like a single long form sales page or video sales letter, something that is meant to convert people who land on it into being buyers, that is, what I would potentially, because also it just takes a long time to write those, so there's the flat fee and then there's the royalty. If I was writing, and I have done this, like a series of a bunch of emails that were maybe acquisition oriented, I might just charge a flat fee, but then maybe there'll be like a one-time bonus, if it like reaches a certain threshold, right? There's so many different ways you can structure it. You could have I just set up a deal with one company for one of my mentees to just do a headline and lead test and some emails to drive traffic to the sales page. And they'll be paid a flat fee, assuming the project gets completed, to their satisfaction. And then if they run it and it reaches a certain sales threshold within, I think, the first 3 days, whatever the period of time is, they'll get basically an additional bonus, one-time bonus. So you can build in incentives for performance, and then you might find that, okay, so maybe they might want to charge $3,000, but you say, well, how about we do it for $2,000 and you get 2% of net sales, or how about we do it for $2,500, and if it becomes our new control, we'll give you a one-time bonus of $2,000 or whatever. There's so many different ways you can do it. I mean, I once had a control with National Geographic many years ago for one of their books, and they were not accustomed to doing royalties, but I just set up something like a bonus structure, and they had if they hit certain thresholds for the number of names it could mail, this is like with direct mail, the more you mail, the more it's a sign that it's a successful promo. Then I would get like either a $5,000 bonus for each mailing or a $10,000 bonus or whatever it was, the structure. So there's just a lot of different ways you can do it. You don't necessarily royalties don't always make sense. It depends on the kind of promo, and you can use incentives to pay less upfront. I mean, as a business owner, I actually think you can use them to reduce your upfront risk.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Setting I like the milestone thing too. The bonuses, like even if it's just a one time, and maybe within a time frame, so it's getting them to really put a lot of focus into it. Do a lot of A/B testing, assuming you have enough eyeballs on there.
I mean, I've done it with like people who are like, I don't want to pay your full fee. It's too high. This was like a while ago. Right. And so I'll just take a smaller fee, but I'll be like, I'll get a one-time bonus of X amount. And it basically comes out to what my full fee would have been or beyond or whatever. But it makes it a little bit less risk for them up front, so there's ways you can structure it. And I think that incentives and bonuses can work to actually reduce your initial upfront cost. And you may pay more over time, but you're only paying it if it's successful in making you money.
Right. Awesome. Well, I think that's super helpful, Kim, and kind of exposing what I think a lot of copywriters and folks don't really talk about. It's kind of unknown for
no copywriter will ever, now no one's ever going to talk to me again. Like, Kim, why'd you spill all of our secrets?
That was our code.
No, I think it's been really helpful for us because we've always had these sort of like mental barriers about hiring copywriters, whether they be, financial barriers of us going, oh, that seems pricey for what it is, or, barriers of us feeling like nobody knows our product better than we do, so we shouldn't hire copywriters, we should write it ourselves because we know the product inside and out. Or maybe it's, just we're too close to our own product, or,
it's a combination of all that. I mean, you're too close to it and you want to get a copywriter who's not going to just freaking phone it in or just use some little template, like let me fill in the blanks, but is going to really dig into that product, and that's, I think I told you I have this program I've been doing where I've been like tearing down some of my most successful controls. And, for each of these, I think there's obviously steps that are always the same. But then there's, just approaching each one is like its own unique thing because, it's like digging out that story.
Right.
And I mean, I learned that early on, like working at Philips, just some of the different products that we marketed. And I mean, I even got on a plane in the middle of winter and went to visit a manufacturer of an air purifier that we wanted to see if we could sell on the back end. And we were like a $400 air purifier. But I knew, by the time I toured the factory, saw how he took one apart, I knew why there was this much zeolite and why there was like that much HEPA filter and why this was there and that. Like I could have built the thing. and I wrote like this little 6-page insert and nobody thought it was going to work. And it like did really great,
Wow. You understood the product.
So, so then I write supplement copy. Like I go deep. I really dig deep into, not just, what is the unique mechanism, but like sometimes there's multiple ingredients and they all have multiple mechanisms and there's not just one mechanism of the problem, but there's multiple mechanisms and like, how do you make it up? But you have to make it all obviously understandable and but like, how do you weave this whole story that you feel like I need every single ingredient in that formula? I'm not going to just go off and buy this other thing, because I read about this or, so you want copywriters who are going to really dig in and, and like another quick story, like on that vein, again, these are all lessons for me that have influenced my copywriting over the last couple decades. But when I first went to Phillips Publishing, one of the reasons my job was created was Clayton Makepeace, the late Clayton Makepeace, great copywriter. He had written the launch promotion for their first alternative health newsletter, Health and Healing, which was the one with Dr. Julian Whitaker. And so like the way he approached his research, I mean, it's ideally how any copywriter would approach it, although not everybody's going to do it to this length. But he flew out to Newport Beach. He toured Dr. Whitaker's medical clinic. He hung out with him by the pool and talked for hours and just like really got into his head, got into his brain, like figured out like what is so unique about what this guy does, and basically just created this brand, that was in this this incredibly successful Magalog sales promotion that brought in, within the first couple of years, they had over 300,000 paid subscribers. And so when I came and I was like figuring out what else to sell to these people, it's like, well, let's start a supplement business. Like, I mean, we basically, we went to 23 million, just going to that list,
Wow.
and you talk about brand voice, like so much of it was like, what's that brand? And how does Dr. Whitaker talk, and he says these certain words and phrases and you get his passion across and everything else. So like as an entrepreneur, like you ideally want a copywriter who's just going to do that at least on some kind of micro level, but like really interview you, figure out like, why you do what you do, what's unique about your process, whatever it is, and then put that story out there. And you want a copywriter who's really going to do that work, do that level of research. I mean, 60 to 7, at least 60% or 70% of the work I put into every long form promo is research. And figure out what I'm going to write about, and then the damn thing practically writes itself. I mean, it's still a lot more work than that, but still, it's like
makes sense.
It's really that but it's just that research and those interviews, and I've been dissecting all these promotions in my copy teardowns. I've been pulling out file folders. Some of them are from like 8 or 10 years ago. And I'm like looking at notes where I interviewed the doctor, I interviewed the formulator, I interviewed, whoever, and just like, yeah, that's where I got that. And that's where I got that. So you want people who are going to put that work into it.
Yeah. And it's kind of like the copywriters will find selling points too, that if you are the product creator, you're probably too close to even see those selling points. There's the example, this is going to sound really bad because I don't remember if it's from Mad Men or if it was something that Ogilvy did. But there's that example of like, they're trying to do this like cigarette campaign, right? And they're saying, well, ours are toasted. And they're like, yeah, but everybody's are toasted. Yeah, but the customer, the general audience doesn't know that. Just say you're toasted and everybody will associate you with the guys whose cigarettes are toasted.
Yeah. Well, that's the strategy of preeminence that Jay Abraham talks about, and he uses the Schlitz beer story, and it's funny because Mad Men the script writers probably based it on that, but Schlitz was talking about how their beer was cold filtered or some kind of manufacturing process everybody did, and then it was like, ooh, the cold filtered.
Let's just label it, label it, and people imprint that in their minds.
But the reality is, I mean, you might have to do that, but the reality is there's usually a unique story that can come out, especially when it's a personality driven product.
Definitely. So. Well, Kim, we already took you longer than we asked you give it to for this.
Yeah, no, this has been great. The time has flown by. It's been really great talking with you guys.
Yeah, I feel like we could probably do 3 hours. So maybe if you're open, we'll have you back for a round 2, and we'll go off on a different tangent.
Yeah, different copy tangent.
I would definitely be up for that. I would love it.
Awesome. And remind us again where folks can get the action guides that are free, but you're probably going to make them paid right after this episode goes live.
Yeah, I'm just kidding. It's still free. It's the A-List Copywriters Checklist. You can go to kimschwalm.com, KIMSCHWALM.com.
Right on.
Very cool. Now, are there any, we like to ask this question to all of our guests because we're big readers ourselves. Are there any books that you recommend others often, or you refer back to often, probably specifically in copywriting, because there is a lot of copywriting books out there? What are sort of your go-tos?
Well, I mean, Gene Schwartz's Breakthrough Advertising is an amazing book. Mm-hmm. There's really like 1 or 2 chapters that I just always go back to. I look at like the stage of market sophistication and stage of awareness. And I think that really ties in a lot with figuring out the right copy approach that you might take, especially like with a headline or just a main hook. So, I mean, that's for probably a little more sophisticated person about copywriting. Mm-hmm. But I'll tell you, like 2 books that I read when I left Phillips and I first became a freelance copywriter were Scientific Advertising and My Life in Advertising by Claude Hopkins. Mm-hmm. And at least I think one of them, Scientific Advertising, you can just get a free PDF online.
I believe so.
I believe.
Yeah, but they're just great books. And, I did reread. I reread Scientific Advertising last year, and just got, actually, I think again earlier this year, and I got so many lessons that I shared with some of my mentees, and But I remember reading it back then, and this is after having 6 years of working at Philips and having all that, success with Healthy Directions. And it all just like made everything click. I'm like, oh, wait, like, okay, now I get it. Like, it was kind of weird because like I said, I'd never actually been a copywriter. I'd written copy, but I was always a marketer that could write.
Sometimes it sinks in a little deeper.
Yeah, it just really made it all connect, even though it's like taking place in the 1920s or when it was written like this. It's timeless. It's just timeless about selling through words,
Yeah. Well, that's not going to change. It's just the
really,
medium.
it's timeless lessons. And I think that book alone, if you read scientific advertising, you're just going to get so much value, and you can find it for free.
Yeah, I believe that one is in the public domain now. So
yeah.
Well, we'll link that up, and along with everything else too. And Kim, thank you so very much. And
you're very welcome. It was great. It was wonderful. Hope we'll see you guys in real life one of these days.
One of these days. All right. See you later.
Okay. Take care.
Thanks so much for tuning into that episode. I hope you dug it. I know Joe and I dug it. I actually kicked Joe out of the room. He's not here right now because I wanted to tell you about a tool that I really, really dig. We use it in our business. We recommend it all the time. It's called Easy Webinar, and it's a tool that lets you do live webinars, automated webinars, hybrid webinars, and, pretty much any other kind of webinar if there are other kinds of webinars. But anyway, this tool is kind of like your all-in-one, do-it-all tool for anything webinar related. It's Easy Webinar. It's put out by a dude named Casey Zeman. He's been on the podcast. If you haven't listened to that episode, it's a killer episode. He's a really smart dude, but his software is amazing. It does everything. It's, the title tells you exactly what it does. It's an easy webinar platform. And we use this in our business to run automated webinars all the time. We don't do a lot of live webinars these days. We like to do the kind of automated webinars where somebody can register and then they can either watch it like 15 minutes later or they can watch it the next day, but it's just kind of always running. And it's a system that helps us make autopilot sales off of our webinars. Super cool tool. If you haven't tried it yet, it's an amazing tool. And Casey is actually hooking you up. He said for listeners of Hustle and Flowchart, I can't believe he's doing this, but he said for listeners of the Hustle and Flowchart podcast, he's giving 25% off of the membership to use Easy Webinar. It's already super, super inexpensive for what it does and all the cool features it has, but he's hooking you up with 25% off because you're a listener of Hustle and Flowchart. Go to easywebinar.com/hustle. That's where you can get that 25% off discount. That's easywebinar.com/hustle. It's a awesome tool. You're going to dig it. So just go grab it. Check it out. easywebinar.com/hustle. See ya. No, not see ya. You'll hear me in the next show. I don't know how to close these things. Go get Easy Webinar. Talk to you later. Thanks everybody for listening to this episode of the Hustle and Flowchart podcast. Before taking the time to listen, we want to give you something a little bit special. Every single episode that we do, we actually have somebody on our team take notes. We basically have a Cliff's Notes version of every episode where you can go and find all of the tips and tactics that they laid out, all of the resources that they laid out, all the good stuff from this episode. We actually have a nice simple notes version that you can find on our website. So go to evergreenprofits.com, find this episode that you just listened to, and give us your email address and we'll send you the notes. Thanks for listening.